guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's time for a Talk Magic, and I am here with such a creative guy, someone who I've been a big fan of for probably the best part of 2 decades now. I have Oliver Meech right here on Talk Magic. Oliver, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. All good, all good. Looking forward to channeling that creativity and magic and all that stuff.
I'm so excited about having you on the show because when I reached out to you, I told you, I've been a big fan of yours for so long. I remember reviewing some of your older books on the Wizard Product Review and literally raving about the material. And I still do now. There's probably about 7 or 8 times on the channel where if somebody's asked a question about creativity, I've said, well, it's Oliver Meech. That's where you need to go. That's how you learn how to be creative.
Amazing. Well, I remember, I still remember. It was nice because they were my first, books, especially like whatever it was, Plot Thickens and Plot Tips, my first books. And I was like, whoa, you do this thing, you put it out into the world and you go, whoa, is anyone going to like it? And so, I remember you doing, I think you did the trick with the passport photos. I think you made, I was like, oh, Craig, you made it up. You gave it a go. And so that was really nice to see. And likewise, we were just saying before it started, obviously we haven't met, chatted in person that much, but I sort of feel like I do you from having seen all the review show stuff over the years and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's great to be on.
The nice thing was, back when I was doing the Wizard Product Review, Dave Penn didn't like books, so every time a book came in, I get to have it, and
nice.
That was cool. But I kind of referred to you on the channel a little while ago as the best kept secret in magic, and I really think you are, because a lot of people don't know who you are. Or might not have experienced your material, and I want to talk an awful lot about that. But let's very quickly just start off at the very beginning. Is your story into magic the same as most people's? You got a Paul Daniels magic set when you were 2 and it all went from there. How did you get the magic bug?
Yeah, pretty much. So I know, like everyone, it's often the same. So in my case, it was almost that, except I didn't have a set, but my friend did. So I was always slightly envious. And I think secondly, and then I got a book. So I got into it a bit later. I sort of, saw some tricks in Covent Garden Market when I was 10 or something, and then forgot about it, and then got back into it, tried a bit of juggling, tried, a few other things. And then when I was about 16, I think it was, got a copy of Paul Daniels' Adult Magic, it was called, which, which sounds a little bit, like risque, but isn't. Great book.
One of the first tricks that I ever did that fooled everybody was in Adult Magic. It's one of the first magic books I ever got. It's the one where we had an envelope with a card underneath it.
Oh yeah, and you deal it down, and then you got
an envelope, and I'm like, so good. I still do that today.
It's got really good material, especially for a beginner's book, because often I think, in a weird way, it might have helped not having the magic sets. I know it's such a classic thing, but sometimes you open it, we've got one recently, and sometimes they're good, but you get some weird bit of plastic, you don't quite understand how to use it, and and a little vase thing, and it can be amazing in the right hands, but you're trying to figure it out, and it doesn't, whereas I think that Adult Magic book, although it was for beginners, there was some really, really strong material in there as well. So I think that really helped, and I think I was sort of ready then, and then all through uni, I was, playing with playing magic and doing, performing at like college events or that kind of, I do stuff at the balls there. And then, and then ever since then, it's sort of always loved magic, always loved creativity. And it's sort of just been a mix of both.
Okay. And before we go on about creativity and we talk about you, and that's something that I want to spend a long time on. Did you ever, I know that you have a job, as well as being a magician and a creator of magic, you have a job. Was there ever a point in your life where you went full-time professional, or did you make the decision to just keep it as like a semi-professional stroke hobby type thing?
Yeah, so I think it's been a mix. It's weird. So I think I've always done both, but to varying degrees, I suppose. So for maybe the first 5 years. So for people who don't know, I'm an advertising creative and copywriter, basically. So I have ideas and I write adverts and headlines and copy for different brands. So I sort of did that for the first 5 years or so, and then full time, and then I went kind of freelance for a bit. So then I was doing a sort of chunk. It was quite intensive. I do sort of a chunk of magic for a bit, and then I do a few weeks in an agency, and I go in and do a chunk of that, and I sort of hop back and forth doing that with my old partner, who was Carrie Fransman, who's now an amazing kind of graphic novelist. So she's gone in to do that kind of thing. So they've always been both, and then had kids, wanted to do a bit more, went back to advertising a bit. So now I currently do sort of 4 days a week in advertising, and then 1 day a week, my sort of Fridays are my magic day normally, where I can kind of devote to magic and get into it. So it's a weird mix. So I've sort of done I suppose income wise, it's been about 50-50-ish. I've never done fully magic and I've never done fully advertising. So I think I'd like to do more magic, but it's just juggling the two. I think the downside is, I think that's partly why I like, the downside is I have to make the most of the time I have, because I haven't got whatever it is, 4 gigs a week for 5 years or whatever. But the upside is that I've been able to embrace the love of it. I've been very lucky in that when I do magic and you know, I think about it every single day, even if I'm not doing it every single day, I get to really enjoy and focus on the tricks that I want to do and play with, and not the sort of, I haven't had to do much of the, oh, well, I don't particularly like this, but it is commercial and it'll get me paid. So that's not that's, you know, it's not always an either or thing, but I've been very lucky in that respect that I've gone, oh, I can, you know, I'd like to do whatever, a routine about magic and science, or a magic about whatever. And then I can create that just for the love of it, as opposed to worrying about how commercial it is and whether it works in a banquet, you know.
And you know what, I think I don't think it's the case anymore, but I think for many years, you kind of got looked down on if you weren't a full-time professional. It's like, oh, you can't be a real magician if you're not a full-time pro, don't you know?
Yeah.
And to those people, I always cite Matt Baker, John Bannon, you know, to people like that. Some of the best magicians in the world are either hobbyists or semi-professionals. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that there's been a flip, especially since COVID. I think that anybody who's not a full-time professional magician is kind of there going, well, who's laughing now, you know? So I think that
and I think also it's interesting, like I think some people love, I think also I love lots of things. Some people love, you know, one specific thing and they want to do that all the time, and that's the only thing they ever want to do, whereas I've always been interested in lots of different things, and I try and pull different influences into my magic. So it's the same, like sometimes I think it's the way the world's going as well. You get a lot of people who are doing whatever they call, you know, portfolio careers, where people might be doing, you know, or side hustles, and they're doing, you know, Instagram, and then maybe becoming a food blogger, and then they're also doing, you know, dance on the side, or they're doing whatever else. So I think it can be nice to, or I enjoy the stretching different parts of your brain, you know, and they, you know, some are more social, some are more, you know, some are more like solo. I think it's really flexible. And I think things have changed. I think you're right. Like I think a lot of us get imposter syndrome, or sometimes in magic, you either get people who are massively, massively confident and sometimes overconfident. And then you get other people who you know, have imposter syndrome sometime and go, oh, I'm not a proper magician. I feel like there's probably a Twitter thread to be had of like, I'm not a proper magician because, you know, like that kind of thing. So I feel like it's that with magic, like I'm not a proper magician because I'm not full-time, and I'm not a proper magician because, for instance, I love quirky stuff and weird objects and all the rest of it, but I always feel weird at conventions because I don't have that like signature convention trick that everyone goes, ooh, at midnight, you know. Whereas like my stuff's like, oh, let me just grab this, you know, whatever, this fake brain and these bits, and it's a stage routine. You can't just kind of go, ba-doom, but it doesn't mean you're not a proper magician. And I think, I think also if you've got, I think the more influences you have on a good day, the more you can, you know, the more ideally you can help to enrich your magic, you know. And I know you mentioned beforehand that you know, you love marketing as well, and it all feeds together, or it should do, you know. It's not like always separate pockets. Everything influences everything else. So I think that is hopefully, the case. I think people are a bit more fluid now.
I agree. And you know, you touched on something earlier, but I completely agree with you. I do think that people that aren't full-time magicians are generally more creative or have less limitations. I mean, when I was just a full-time magician and I was just going out and gigging, I didn't have time to really learn something that I knew I wasn't going to use. I had to, because I was going out gigging every single night, it had to be something that would work in the trenches. Since I've run companies and I've been able to take a step back from actually performing myself, my range of repertoire, I now do stuff that I never would have done if I was just going out gigging every single night, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah,
because I noticed from your you know, YouTube videos, like you have a really like wide repertoire, or a wide source of different angles that you can explore. And like you say, and also it doesn't have to be, I think there's that weird thing, and I'm sure other people have, I've heard someone else say a similar thing on a podcast, but you know, it doesn't always have to be, not lowest common denominator, but it doesn't always have to be the most bulletproof. Everything doesn't have to be bulletproof. Things can have their uses. So, you know, if you have a routine that works brilliantly in a stage show, then it can be. It doesn't have to also work surrounded, or you have some routines that work surrounded, and there's some routines that don't work surrounded. Just like, you know, prep or no prep, or you know, having a specific deck of cards for a trick. You know, like if all your tricks are like that and you haven't got pockets, that's a problem. If you're on a Zoom show and you're doing 2 card tricks, then it's not a problem. So I think having that feeling of, I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in magic that there's, you know, the answer and the way. And also, you know, some people say, it's obviously you can't use, you know, you can't, it's all about the sleight. You have to be purist. You can't, you know, you just have to use sleight, or, it's got to pack flat, play big, all the rest of it, you know, and then you get the revert and you get the flip of that. But actually, you know, there's space for everything. I think there's space for a real mix in there. And I think it's that limitation. You mentally, you don't have to limit yourself. It's amazing when you find those sort of assumptions in your head where you go, actually, I realized that I am, you know, applying I'm treating a Zoom show like a walk around show, or I'm, you know, like you're bringing in more limitations than you necessarily need to free you up. So I think there is that space to be more flexible.
Well, I've got a friend that's a magician, and he's just a hobbyist. He's got no intention of ever doing a paid gig ever. And he just performs for the love of it. And he will go to the nth degree to set up a trick to fool one person at one meeting. Like he'll have like 2 hours of prep to do this one incredible thing to this one person that he's meeting for a drink down the pub. I would never do that. But for him, it's all about the end result and the moment of magic. It's not necessarily about the work that has to go in beforehand, because he's not being paid for it. So, you know, there's that as well. Yeah,
you're not fixing it. I think you're right. And I think also if you don't, I think there's a mix also. There's things that you would enjoy doing occasionally versus things that you have to do 40 times a week or at 24 tables. And I think that's the other thing, that sometimes no matter how much you love it, it can dull the joy a bit. All right. But I think also I think you're right. It's recognizing which one's which and where you can play in what situation. So I think I've had the flip side sometimes when I've gone to the other extreme, because I love a bit of prep beforehand as well, because also there's no way, you know, it's not like a move where they can't catch you. They can't catch you because you did it 2 days ago, you know, like there's just no way. And also it's good because, you know, like anything like high skill or like anything else, you know, most people won't do it. Therefore you end up with a more original trick. But just beware. I have had sort of glimpses of what it must be like when I've done, you know, the Fringe or whatever, and you've had, you know, 24 shows in a row or something, and like the mountain prep when you suddenly go, well, 24 times, like I came up with the trick with bottles of wine, and I had 3 little mini bottles of wine because it was about sort of wine tasting and stuff, and then I realized I was doing 24 shows and I couldn't fit it in my case, and I had to go and fly because my show was in the afternoon. So I turned up at like in Edinburgh Sainsbury's at like 9:30 in the morning and put like 50 small bottles of wine on the thing, and then, you know, some chewing gum or something, and they looked at me in that look of, has life come to that? And I was like, I'm a magician. She was like, yeah, of course you are. Yeah, sure. So I think there is, that does happen, but it's just finding the range and what's best for what situation, I suppose.
Well, let's start talking about creativity. Your first book was Plot Twists, and then you
actually I lose track so long ago. I think first one was Plot Thickens, and then it was Plot Twists. But
right, okay.
Yeah.
And those two came fairly quickly.
Yeah, there was like a year or two in between, something like that, but fairly close to one another. Yeah, that's true.
What made you decide to write the books? Mm-hmm. And can you share with us a little bit about the content of the books and about the philosophy behind it? Because so many magicians are desperate to create their own magic and stamp their own uniqueness on a trick. And that's something that your career in magic has embodied literally from the first second that I heard of you.
Yeah, I think that's lovely to hear. I think a lot of magicians, I can't remember which one it's in. Like, so yeah, those are those. And then I think it's in here. I think it was in the first one. Yeah, I did an introduction, which was basically about that. So the reason why it's called, I'll start with why I wanted to do it, and then I'll talk about the plot. So I wanted to do it just because it's one of those things, I've always been creative and I was always looking for an outlet for it. And I've always enjoyed having ideas since I was a kid. And, you know, I'd invent like gadgets for watches and that kind of thing, you know, in primary school. And then I always quite enjoyed the art, but it was the execution. So I always get frustrated. I try and do art for a while. But what I envisioned in my head, when I tried to draw it, was just this, you know, this messy scribble, or these sort of stick men. And I couldn't translate it from my head to the world. And so when I discovered magic, it was wonderful because I was like, oh, finally. So yeah, I don't think it wasn't like I had magic and then tried to add creativity. I love creativity anyway. And then I was like, finally, here's a thing where I can picture a trick and go, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, whatever, you vanish something and it appears in a bottle. And then you can go, well, if you've got enough techniques and you think long enough, you can make it a thing. So that whole sort of turning ideas into reality, I loved. And it was a way of kind of expressing it in a way that I could do to a you know, to a good degree, as opposed to art where it never felt like I was doing it justice. So I think it came from there, and also because I was doing advertising and ideas, I was used to coming up with lots of ideas as well. And then the reason it's called Plot Thickens and Plot Twist originally was just try and focus a bit on plot, because I think a lot of magic is, you know, it's very focused around method. And, you know, that makes sense, because obviously if the trick isn't falling, then, you know, it's not a trick. So method is definitely important. But it was basically the idea that, you know, in a trick, you've got the presentation, you've got the, you know, the plot, and you've got the method. And so, you know, and like 90%, it feels like, whatever, of magic is all focused on the method. And, you know, we've got, you know, whatever flavor is the month is, now it's Rubik's Cubes, but in the past it was Matrix. So, you know, we've got 150 methods for how to do a Matrix thing, you know, and it's a good trick, but do we, you know, and then you've got, you know, and then you look at in terms of new plots, people aren't always spending that much time on them. And it seemed to be weird to me in that you have, not that there's any one, and again, it's not that one's right and one's the other wrong. It's just in terms of fleshing out the creativity in magic, it seemed like a good place to play plot, because, you know, not many people were. And also we've got all these tools from the method. We've got, you know, we've got 500 years or more of every possible tool. And sometimes they're, you know, specific to a trick, but most of the time, like, you know, with card magic, it's your building blocks, and most magic is somewhere along the line is a building block and adaptable. So it was like, well, why don't we take this massive, you know, box of methods that we've got from the years, and then have a little look at the plot, and then whatever you come up with, A, it's more likely to be original, and B, it'll be more different to the audience, hopefully, or the difference will be more apparent, because we know, you know, you can, you know, control a card in a subtly different way. And we know as a magician, oh, that's amazing because it's maintaining a stack or whatever it is. But to the audience, you know, a card force of reveal is often the same. You know, that old, I don't know if it was Scarney or whoever said that, you know, if you've got one way to force a card and 50 ways to reveal it, you've got 50 tricks, and reverse if you've only got one trick. So it was just taking that and applying it to the rest of magic. So that's sort of where they came from. And then and then the second thing is I've always sort of thought about everything in the world being sort of space to play with, and creativity can come from anywhere. And then you can happen to apply that to a trick, or you could happen to apply that to a book or to a song or to a game or whatever. So it's just, rather than seeing magic as this, you know, beautiful walled garden that you explore in, and you go over the increasingly, you know, boggy trodden lawn because, you know, you're playing in there. It's like there's a whole world out there that you can then happen to apply to magic using these, you know, sometimes new methods, but if you have to, but otherwise these other methods, and it feels more different, and it is, you know, it feels more creative, and it's more fun. So that was a long answer, but hopefully that
no, it's a great answer. So can you give me an example of a plot and how you've actually gone through the creative process of coming up with that plot? Because you are right. You know, if I see another coins across, I think I'm going to, you know, slap myself around the head. So, yeah, and I do think, as you say, more magicians should be focusing on the plot. So can you share with us a plot that you've created and how you kind of came to that place?
Yeah, sure. So I was going to show you something. I will park the card trick because that's more methody, but I'll show you the other one because I think that's interesting. And I'll show you this, and then I'll talk about one other routine that I do, that I did in one of my Edinburgh shows that I did. So I'll show you this. So I haven't, normally this is a stage piece, and normally I've got a audience member helping. So I'll have to, so it'll be a bit like the Jay Sankey videos when he's sort of describing what happens while doing and that kind of thing. And I love Jay Sankey. I mean that in the best possible way. He's amazing, amazing, amazing. Anyway, right. So speaking of tricks that have been around for a while, I'm going to show you a trick. This is my version of kind of coin in bottle. Now, you know, as magicians know, we all know what the trick is. The name kind of suggests it's putting a coin into a bottle. But I wanted to sort of take it up a level And so I thought it'd be interesting to do a sort of test conditions coin in bottle, but with a sealed bottle, and then take it up to the next level and go into a sealed bottle that's never been opened. How do we know? Because it's a jar of pasta sauce with a safety button on the top. It's magic. That's also one of your 5 a day. So that's good. All right. So we've got a pasta sauce bottle here, and I would normally hand this to an audience member to sort of hold there. And then we also have some coins. Now, obviously, back when people had coins and didn't just stay at home and buy things on the internet, you know. So we've got a bunch of different coins here. I don't know if you can see, but we've got like 20p's, £2 coins, you know, 2p's, 1p's, okay, a bunch of different coins. So audience member comes up, they reach in, they grab out a coin, grab out which coin they want. Here we go. And what have we got? Okay, so we've got a 10p there, and it's glaring a little bit, but hopefully you can see that.
Yep.
Okay. Now, since this is test conditions, we also need another coin, the control coin, if I can find it. Yes, here we go. And we're going to use a 2p. So it's a bit glary, but hopefully you can see that. So we've got a 10p and a 2p. Okay. And then I would have the audience member hold out their hand like that, nice and flat. And then we're going to put the 10p there, the control coin on top, and I have them hold a jar of pasta sauce. So they stand here, and then I'm standing 6 feet away on the other side of the stage. And I say to them, watch and then copy. And then I do an action and they copy it. So I get them to do this. So I get them to do this. So I get them to go, and they do that. And then, and they lift up and pause. And as a spectator, we know what's going on, but they go, what? And then you go, show the audience, okay, what's left? And you go, 1 coin. What is it? The 2p. Okay. And then they go, watch and copy. And I go, and they go, and then I go, and then they look, and they see that inside the pasta sauce jar is the 10p that they chose. And if they want, you can hand this out as a souvenir and they can keep that. Or if you want, I don't know if you can hear, just to prove that it is actually really sealed, we can, hang on. Pop! You can pop the lid up and they can fish it out themselves if they want.
Awesome.
So there we go.
You see, that's instantly more impressive for me than a normal coin and bottle, where you're holding a bottle that's open and there's the whole, just from a method point of view, it's so clean. But the whole randomness of, hey, pasta sauce, that's just great.
Yeah, and I think it's where, and so that was coming from, I did just want to do a pasta sauce bottle, and that was interesting in a 2-stage thing, because I think the downside sometimes of creating a lot, I think, if there is one, is that sometimes you get very obsessed with the next idea and the next routine you're working on. And sometimes you kind of go, oh, that's a cool thing. And then you go into the next, you know, shiny object syndrome. And you go, oh, let's play with this. Let's create something else over here. So that was originally, so if people are, so I haven't published the method for that yet, because I'm still in my shows and it's still kind of one of the signature things I do. But the sort of starting point and part of the method is, and some of the magicians could probably work it out. So yeah, so please don't all go performing that, because I'm still performing that as a signature effect. But the starting point, if you want to take it in your own direction, is in, I think it's either in Plot Thickens or in Plot Twists. It is in Plot Twists. So it's in Plot Twists. But originally it was just, I wanted to get a coin into a bottle, and it was just a coin. And I thought, well, okay, well, it's in there, but what do I do with that? And it just sort of sat on a shelf. And then I was rereading Barry Richardson's, one of his Theatre of the Mind books, you know, brilliant books. And then, so I got the first, and then I got the second one. And in that he talks about, he revisits, or in the third one, he revisits his previous plots. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I could, you know, I really wanted to make it a signed coin. And again, it's thinking about assumptions as magicians. And it was like, well, how can I make it signed? And then I was inspired by, I suppose this is showing where diverse inspirations coming in. And then I thought, well, does it need to be signed? And I was inspired by David Blaine's classic trick, the card through the window, you know, when he throws the deck, because I was like, that is an amazing trick. And it's not signed. So I know, sorry, I'm slipping into method here. So this was an interesting trick in terms of, I'll come back to plot, but in terms of the trick, it was interesting in that I sort of tried to reverse engineer the principles and then apply them. So I was like, well, why is that amazing, even though it's not signed? And I was like, well, it's because there's close contact between the deck being thrown and where the card appears. So you've got proximity there, I think. And I remember someone else said, I think it was Tom Stone, maybe. Apologies, correct me if I'm wrong, about sort of marrying a balance between how amazing the reappearance is and how amazing the vanish is. And if you've got, if it's not balanced out, then that's what doesn't always work. Or if they were talking about applying it to Tommy Wonder's routine with the clock and how people didn't always believe it was their watch inside the alarm clock and everything, but because the vanish had just been sort of banging on a bag, it wasn't an ultra amazing vanish to match the ultra amazing reappearance. So then I was like, okay. And then I thought, well, why is David Blaine? And then I realized that for a lot of, you know, spectators, a freely chosen card or object is unique already, which is also what doing a signature. So I was like, okay, so logically, it's fun because normally I'll just come up with a random thing and try it. But I was like, okay, well, logically, if I apply proximity and amazing vanish, so hopefully, so it's in their hand, I'm 6 feet away, it vanishes from there. And it's a freely chosen object, seemingly. So, you know, if they freely choose a coin, then it should still equal amazing. So then I put it all together and then tried it, and I was like, is it? And then it you know, it really worked. And I think also, like you say, it's just having an object is you know, one of the classics things to tweak. There was someone at the session who did a talk. The name escapes me. It was someone who does a lot of magic consulting, apologies, but he talks about changing the object. But, you know, we know changing the object is often useful in magic. So I think it started from there, and I was going, okay. And then it was a bottle of liquid. And then I thought, well, that's fine, but you can see the coin. So I was like, well, what if the coin's in there, but you can't see it? So that's where pasta sauce came along. I was like, well, what's vaguely, you know, vaguely opaque that is also quite entertaining? And I like a random object because it's just more memorable. Also in that, describe a trick in a sentence. You know, if you say coin and bottle and you've got your own wrinkle on it, but to the average person, coin and bottle is a coin and a bottle. Whereas you go, oh, well, there was that guy who did coin and pasta sauce jar. You're always like, what? It sounds, and I like weird, I like random, I like silly. So it fits with that as well as hopefully being an amazing twist.
Well, outside of being a great engaging premise, which I think is important, I think the hook at the beginning of a trick is so important.
Yeah.
Which is why when you go to a gig and you go pick a card, I've already seen that one. As soon as you say that, half the people are switched off. They probably haven't seen the trick before, but they're assuming they have. No one's ever going to go, oh, I've saw the pasta sauce trick before. No one's ever going to say that. It's so unique. But aside from that, two things that strike me about that routine. Number one, it's happening in the spectator's hand. They are doing the vanish. They are doing the reappearance. And anything that happens in the spectator's hand is amazing. And that's so clever. But the other thing is, and this is something that I think that magicians don't realize, and I think they should, and we can talk about this because you've got a lot of experience performing at the Fringe and performing on stage, but you have taken here what is in essence a close-up trick and you've put it on stage. And you frame something correctly and you frame something right, you can take something that is designed for close-up and you can play it to the biggest audience.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, I think you're totally right. And I think it's all about, I think especially when you've got an audience member on stage, like I love that, and you know, hopefully, you know, we will be able to come back to that at some point. But I love the interaction, partly because it feels fresh and it feels alive in the moment, especially if you know, go with what they say and don't immediately try and pull it back to your script. But I think also their reactions, and again, I'm not the first one to say this, but my reaction, like their reactions, just amplify it because they can't see the coin. It's the same with egg bag. You know, egg bag, like, it is visible, but it's not a massive trick. But that moment when they reach and you see their, you know, their face or their whole body just goes, you know, like that. I don't do it, but I love the moment, and that moment sells it. And I think it's the same with that. It's surprising that, you know, you could have a person filming on stage and all the rest of it, and maybe you could do that. But just having that person out there, it transmits the trick and it makes it big. And also it's nice because I like that. You know, like Andy from the Jerks talks about this, about being more audience centric and sort of taking your own ego out of it. Like, I obviously still have an ego because I'm a performer, but it's nice to like let other people do stuff, and it's more amazing. And you get a little game. I quite like the copying because you get that sort of game of, oh, how are they copying? All right, you know, that kind of thing. But it magnifies the moment, and their reaction sells it. And then you can give it to them and say, if you want to, oh, and if, you know, like, keep that on you because people will want to see it. And then afterwards people can come and have a look and, you know, check it out. And that's funny in terms of trying to, I think one of the things often is trying to, you want to think like a magician, and then you also have to try and train yourself to not think like a magician and unknow all the things you know. So I think that, like, as a magician, I went, oh, well, I have to pop it afterwards, because otherwise people might think I've just hammered it down or something to prove that it's vacuum sealed, you know. And then afterwards, like, you know, my wife's good at this, or other people who are magicians going, yeah, but why would they? Like, no one else is thinking, like, just give it to them like that, and then you've got the object. So I was like, oh, okay, fine, I'll give it to them like that. And then, you know, and then it is still sealed and it stays as an impossible object. So yeah, I think it's nice to play, again, it's those assumptions, question the assumptions. Like, I remember growing up, I've always loved the Paul Daniels trick, I can't remember the name, but where it starts as a card trick, and then he suddenly lifts up the table and goes voomf, and then Debbie McGee's standing on top of the table. And it was that, because it's a close-up trick that's suddenly a stage trick. And it's just, I love that concept of going, or, you know, some other people have done similarly, like Ben Hart. I've got, hopefully coming for Christmas, Ben Hart's book, but he, you know, how he takes, like he was saying on a podcast, you know, he takes mentalist routines and goes, what if I took, well, you know, what if I took manipulation visuals and applied them to a mentalism routine? I think like one of the simplest definitions of creativity I read was just taking two, you know, 1 + 1 = 3, taking two concepts and just going like together. And any way you can do that, or any way you can take something from one field and put it on stage, you'd be, yeah, like, it's amazing. It's amazing what we'll play with a bit of space, with a bit of thought.
So where do you find your inspiration? Because you've literally written the book on plot twists twice. Where do you find it? Do you ever go through the magician equivalent of writer's block?
So again, I think this is what, yes, sometimes I do, but I think advertising has been very helpful in that sense, in that you, in the same way, sometimes when, you know, people say, when you, I think Mike Caveney, but anyway, generally people say, you know, if they want to create a new show, then, you know, book in a deadline, hard deadline, and it focuses the mind. So it's a little bit like that. Like in advertising, every day is a deadline, and sometimes twice a day is a deadline. So there's no space for writer's block, and it's hard, because you have moments when you go, and then you go, well, no, that's it. You know, still got a deadline. Deadline's still there, so you have to sort of push through it. So I think what's helpful, I find, is, so I think it's helpful. So I can always create something, and I think it doesn't. I think often there's lots of things that we get hung up on when we're creating, and I think there's that thing of, I'm not a creative person. You know, other people have demolished these myths before, but, you know, I'm not a creative person. And also that, you know, inspiration strikes, which it sometimes does, but often it's, you know, you're searching for it and you're playing around. And I think the same with when you get writer's block, or, you know, creative block, it's often because, well, I can say a few things I can do if I'm not feeling it. So I do get it sometimes. I find and they're on a range. You can do either or. So I either crack on, I push on. That's number one, where you hit a wall and you go, okay, well, let's keep thinking about it for another bit of time and see if you push through. Or you go the reverse and you go, actually, make a cup of tea. Like the number of ideas I've had, either, you know, pop into the loo or making a cup of tea, and your head goes bing, like crossword quizzes, that kind of thing. You go, oh, I don't know, in your brain, or, you know, like you sleep on something, you wake up and you go, oh, I could, you know, whatever it is. So I think that helps. I think the more ideas is definitely good. So I don't have an example at the moment, but I'm a big fan of mentally or on paper brainstorming and, you know, spider diagrams, mind maps, whatever you call them. So like I will, sometimes for a trick, I'll just go, right, that's the trick and I want to do a thing. For other tricks, I will go, what could it be? I don't know, like I did a routine, same year as Morgan and West. That's partly when we met. We both ended up going to Edinburgh, both with shows about time travel. It was like, oh, what are the chances? So, but when I was developing that, I was like, okay, time, how many different things about time are there? And I'll just brainstorm 50, and then, you know, maybe 2 of those will be good. But I think that helps because it just gets your brain going, create, and not editing. Again, a lot of these are standard principles, but they definitely help. So you just go, have a thing, because it's so easy to go, oh, I need to create something brilliant. Oh, is it brilliant? Oh no, that's only go, I'll sod it, and you put it away. Whereas if you just go, okay, let's create 10 things, 10 bad things, and you go, okay, here you go, and then you go, well, maybe there's something in that. So I think that helps. I think Eugene Berger talked about having little slips of paper that he had in his wallet with sort of thoughts for ideas, like the history of the world told with a deck of cards. And you just have a thought, you know, it wasn't a full trick, but it was just a bit. So I think that's the other thing. I sort of collect bits. in my head and on my phone. My phone notes list is just full of that. So yeah, so I collect bits, but like magic bits, which people do anyway. People are used to going, okay, I've got a control, I've got a shuffle, I've got a whatever, if it's cards, you know. But I think people just collect other bits, like any interesting article I get, oh, there's a thing. Any article like, what else? Or if you know, I don't know whatever, or anytime you watch a film, I know Dynamis is the same, like you go, okay, oh, that's an interesting thing. I don't know, you know, comic books becoming real, that's an interesting thing. Okay, here we go. And you don't need to go, and then what's the trick and what's the method, because that's overwhelming. You just go, oh, there's a thing. And then if you do get stuck, you can look through and go, oh, well, maybe there's a thing in that. And then the other thing I find is really useful, which I'd recommend to people, and it's fun. That's the other thing. I think sometimes with creativity, it can get quite preachy, or people could go, same with like, oh, you must learn mnemonica or whatever, you know, and people feel like, oh, okay, like it's homework, you know. And like creativity is fun on a good day. It is hard sometimes, but it's also fun. We're not just masochists. I mean, we're not just there going, oh, must create just, you know, another 15 tricks a day. It's because it's fun, and you get that little burst of excitement when you go, oh, you could do this with that, you know. So I think just play a bit. And oh yeah, the other one I was going to say is I find really helpful, especially if you're coming to a routine where, I'll say two more things. If you're coming to a routine that a lot of people have looked at before, like coin in bottle, for instance, or card to box, or, you know, 6-card repeat, you know, one of those where it's already quite saturated. I just go down, I literally list out assumptions, because I think, I think I mentioned this in one of the books, but questioning assumptions is such a great way of bringing up creativity. So, you know, you look at in business, you know, Dyson questioned how vacuum cleaners work. Do they have to work that way? And, you know, lo and behold, became a billionaire, you know, not a billionaire yet, but, you know, nor would I want to be. But I think question assumptions. So if with coin in bottle, you go, okay, what are the assumptions? And just picture the classic trick in your head and then list every aspect out. And you could write it as a sentence and question every word. I haven't done that, but you could. But you go, okay, so it's a magician on stage, a magician on stage holding an empty bottle, putting a coin, a signed, maybe or not signed coin in the bottle, held by the neck, and then he tips it out, you know. And then you can literally just take every single one of those, and behind every single one is a new trick. So you go, okay, so a magician, all right, a spectator holds a bottle, there we go, there's a trick. You know, you don't put a coin in a bottle, you put a card in it, you put a, you know, ship in it, like Sankey's, you know, trick with a drawing, you know, you put whatever else in it. It's not a bottle, it's a pasta sauce jar, you know, like it's not a, whatever it happens, it's not signed, which is, you know, it's a randomly chosen one. So like it's a cork in a bottle, but it's a different cork. I don't know, like you don't remove it from the bottle. You put 15 things in a bottle, like Barry Richardson's routine, where buttons and everything else are going into it. Like, so I think that's a really helpful way sometimes, because I think sometimes in magic, you know, people feel like, oh, you know, everything's been done. How can I come up with another card trick, whatever? And I think that's a useful way, is just literally, so if you did that same thing with, say, card in box, and you go, okay, take every single element of it, because there are a lot of card in box routines out there. But take every single one and just question it and go, well, what is card? Is it a card? Is it in the box? Is it in? And is it box? Card in, like start with those and go, okay, there you go. There's, you know, there's 15 tricks there. And then suddenly it opens it up and it feels like it's this, it's, you know, you knock down the walls of the garden and you've got new places to explore.
That is amazing. That is so good. That is great. I know that people are going to get so much out of that.
And I think just give it also in that, just in that, like the same, like people say, I can't remember who came up with it, the micro goals thing, but the same in, you know, people say do 1 press up. If you're learning, don't try and do 50, do 1. And then the next day do 1. The same in creativity, you know, don't go, right, I'm going to create the world's most inventive thing. And then you spend half an hour on it and you're like, oh, I can't do it, I give up. Just, you know, spend a minute on it and just spend a minute with one trick doing that. And then see how it goes. And then if you don't get anything, it doesn't matter. It's just a minute. And then maybe another day, spend a minute on that. And just assume that, you know, 1 in 10. And over time, it's not this big, amazing, strange thing that other people do. It's something that anyone can do.
So here's a question. Do you find it more difficult to create when you're using a standard object like a pack of cards? I do. You know, I've created a lot of magic. And I find it easier when I'm taking an object that's very, like, my Keymaster routine or my chop routine or stuff like that. It's taking something that's not really had much done with it. With a pack of cards, it's kind of like, well, people have been working with this thing now for hundreds of years. It's kind of almost overwhelming that I can feel that standing on the shoulders of so many giants, I can do something radically different with this prop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely I do. And also, like, that's why it's interesting. I do a lot of my routines use random objects, which I hate when I'm lugging them up and down. I used to lug them up and down the tube, and I'll be like, some people just have a deck of cards, with your jars of pasta sauce. I did a trick with Quality Street in a show I did, and again at Edinburgh. So I bought 8 kilos of Quality Street up with me, and I'm sorting through the boxes, going, what are you doing? Just 2 decks of cards. But I love it. But I think that's part. I agree. So it is harder. So number one is, don't use cards. Like if it is harder, it's that weird 6 billion things in the world, and the pie chart of what we've used for Magic is like cards, coins, everything else. So that. Number 2 is a midpoint, I suppose, which is linked to that Joshua J research that he did a while back in Magic, which was great about what's more impressive and stuff. And I think one of the factors from that, I believe, I'm quite creative, but my memory is sometimes a bit rubbish. So apologies if I'm not getting all the references perfectly right here. But was that the deck of card plus an object was an interesting thing for a routine. If you think of like Tiny Plunger and things like that, John Armstrong and stuff. So that's another way to go, is if you've got an object that's never been used, before, deck of cards plus whatever. And then suddenly you go deck of cards plus lemon, deck of cards plus, magnet, deck of cards plus glasses. And it's easier. And then if you are on the object, then I think it sounds weird, but don't start with the object, because I think another way that I've noticed sometimes I think about things is, and I keep meaning to write a blog post on it, but I haven't yet. So you get it first. So anyway, so and other people think this too, I'm sure. It's like a lot of magic is like magic outwards. And you start with magic or object outwards, and you go, okay, here's a deck of cards. Well, what has it got? It's got, it's got pips, and it's got 52 of them, and it's got a case. And what can I do with a case and card under case and and it's like trying to go from there. And then sometimes you get a sort of grafted on presentation, and that's where it feels a bit weird, because you go, okay, well, I'm doing this trick, I'm doing out of this world, but what's it about? And then you kind of go, oh, well, migration patterns of birds are interesting, and so are playing cards, and you're like, what? So I go the other way. I find it useful. So if I've got an object that I don't know, I go, okay, let's go world inwards or life inwards, and you start somewhere else. And you go and work backwards, because you can always it's like 6 degrees to separation. It's like 6 degrees to card trick. You can always get back to a card trick one way or another, So, because it either becomes the trick or you have blank face cards and write on them or whatever. You can always come back to the safety of home of card tricks. So start somewhere else. And I think, like the example I gave of Eugene Berger with History of the World told with a pack of cards, you were already somewhere else. Like I was lucky to do a TED talk a little while back. And one of the points I made on that in terms of thinking like a magician was leap far first. And I think that's one of my goals. So rather than going deck of cards, because it is really hard, because you go, oh, I know, they could become a block of plastic. Oh, that's me. Okay, it could be blank. It could not be blank. Oh, we could find 1 card. We could find 6 cards. And you're just like, your brain just goes done, 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 done. Or you're like, yeah, I like to imagine it sort of, if you're here, and then if you're trying to find a way to a new idea, you're here, and you've got all the other ideas here. And if you're starting with the cards, then you're trying to go, oh, hang on, no, hit that one. Oh, no, I've hit that one. Oh, no, I've hit that one. Oh, no, I've hit that one. Whereas if you start here and you go, okay, cards and what can I see? Hoover, okay? Cards and Hoover. And you start with Hoover, and then you're like over here, and you're like, well, I can't think of any other tricks with card and Hoover. So suddenly you're like, oh, well, I can go here, I can go here, I can go here. And then I think that way, on a good day, it's logical. And then the other thing you can do, which I know Morgan and West have talked about sometimes, is go afterwards, you do that. The other upside is sometimes you go, oh, and turns out it's not a card trick at all, So like I've just finished reading Parlor Tricks, and they have a great routine in there with finger rings, and you mix them up. But I know they said it started as a card trick. And you go, so if you go somewhere else and you go Hoover and you go cards, so they're in a Hoover, and you go, and then you go, well, maybe that's a trick and that's great, or maybe it's not cards and it's, I don't know, bits of multicolored dust or something. And then it's a whole other thing again, but you've still started there. So I think yeah, those are what I tend to do with objects that have been around a lot, because yeah, it is tough.
Good advice. And on that subject, there's so many wonderful plots that have been created over the years with cards that you can apply to other objects. So one of my favorite routines to perform in a parlor show is out of this world with postage stamps. And I do
nice.
I do it out of the world with postage stamps, and it kills. But it was
like Darren Brown did on some US talk show I saw around the election time, and he had pictures of people, and I know he did in his TV show with Alive or Dead, and then he did one more recently on a talk show, and it was like, you know, Republican or Democrat, and it's like, yeah, exactly, like we've got all these, there's so many good things exactly bundled in, like you say, so many plots that are sort of bundled in with cards that you can still apply to cards, but you can, yeah, you can do both. You can take the plots from cards and apply them to not cards, and then you can take the plots from not cards and life and the world and stick them onto cards. So I think it's just, yeah, blurring it. There's so much, yeah, there's so much, that's the thing, there's so much we've created that's adaptable, but is only done in particular ways. And you're like, no, these are all flexible, you know.
And it's you know, people talk about thinking outside the box. I think it's more of a case of blowing up the box and just not having anything stopping your thought process at all, you know.
Yeah, because it is really hard, because I think, especially when you get into magic, you I wrote a thing once called recently called Clocks, Blocks and Clay, and it's that sort of idea of like, you can treat magic tricks like a clock, and it's like a Swiss watch, and you touch the tiniest bit and it all just goes, you know, or you can treat them like a block, and they're like building blocks, you know, like Luke Jamay had a book called Building Blocks, you know, and they're like different bits like cards you can fix, or you can treat it like clay, and it's that same thing, you know, stretch it here, stretch it there. But I think it is hard because those boxes, because we start learning with boxes and we go, this is how you do the trick, and you go, okay, and it's, you know, and because it's, I don't know, it's not like comedy's got its own thing, but in stand-up you can be anything, and magic should be anything, but it's like, this is the way you do it. And I think the other thing I think that would help with magic that I would love to see is introducing creativity earlier in people's journey. So I think sometimes in magic is this thing that you learn magic, you learn the way, you learn the rules before you break them, and you learn it that way, and then once you've become a master, then you can do something different. And it's like, that's true, but then once you've learned all that, you've then got all those standard rules that you've absorbed over years, and then you've built your own box. You've properly spent a long time filling in that box. Whereas I think, you know, coming back to Jay Sankey, he grew up on a farm, you know, and he didn't, like, that's partly why, you know, he didn't have all that stuff that you start with. And I started in magic, I didn't have that many books at first. I started in my head, then I sort of filled in the ideas. So I started with stuff that I didn't know the box. So it's sort of getting back to that and being comfy with going everywhere. Because I think we're so used to being like, right, I'm a box. And even within magic, you know, I'm a mentalist, I only do that. I'm a card purist, I only do that. I'm a whatever, or this is a stage thing that, you know, and they're not box. Or if they are, they're, you know, at best I love a Venn diagram, and at best they're overlapping Venn diagrams everywhere. So yeah, just going, see where it goes, because they're only ideas, you know, they don't all have to work. I
did an interview recently with Nate Kranzo. Don't know how
cool.
And he was talking about his creative process behind the moving tan line, which is a beautiful effect.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and he said, well, that came about because he was working on a finger ring manipulation routine, and he was trying to work out a way of having a ring penetrate from one finger to another, and he was struggling with it. And then he just kind of he thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if I penetrated a sort of a tan line of a band of a tan line of a ring? And then he was like, well, that's not going to be very visual. And that eventually led to the watch. And then he went to the trouble of actually going to a tanning booth and trying it out and actually going down that thing. But if he'd have just stopped at the fingering thing and said, well, you know, I'm trying to do this fingering route, I can't get distracted with other stuff.
Yeah,
we never would have the moving tan line, which has been performed by so many TV magicians.
Yeah, exactly. No, great example. Exactly. And I think the other thing which you touched on there as well, which is not like, as well as the stop thinking too soon, don't stop thinking too soon, is also like, it's the stepping stones thing, and that also that you don't have to get there at once. Like, I think when you read a magazine, you don't see all the scaffolding, you know, and you just see the end result and you go, oh, that's beautiful. And you don't see all the horrible, like the weird in between bits. So I think you don't have to be there at once. And I think a lot of magicians I know who are creative, they have their finished pieces, but then it's like a little, you know, like a little graph of different, if this is, you know, initial idea and this is finished routine. And most people, you know, you've just got little bits along the way, and you can go, okay, this routine's 80% there, but I'm a bit stuck on that. So you can park it. It doesn't have to be finished. Make a note of it. Same with like the tan light. Yeah. And also you can't always see the end. It feels very, very spiritual. One cannot always see the end from the beginning. It is only the path that reveals. But it is that someone said that, again, apologies, I'm not sure who, someone said that, you know, creativity was like fumbling around in a dark room, and then you find a light switch, and then you can see that room, and then you find another door, and then you fumble around and that you see the light switch. And it's like that, or like a stepping stone. Like you say, there is no one leap that goes from that to there, but there is a little leap there, and then there's a little leap there, and then you try it out, and then it becomes more visual, and there's a little leap along there. So I think it's realizing, yeah, most creative leaps, sometimes, you know, it comes fully formed and it's amazing, but most of the time, you know, there's 10 little leaps that get you to the big leap at the end.
And have you written any other books on plot twists or creativity outside of the two that you wrote over a decade ago? Because I know that you won't have stopped creating, and you said earlier on, I've not published this yet. Yeah. Have you? But I'm only aware of the two books.
So I've done 4 books, and then other stuff happened. So in terms of the books, there was Plot Twists and Plot Thickens that initially came out. Then there's a random side book which is still available, which is a slightly different flavor book, which is called Drawn In, and it's a kind of it's a creative framing for the ID, shall we call it, that classic card routine for anyone, yeah, but for that basically, for the 1 cards turned over trick. And so it's based on that, and it's like a choose your own adventure novel. So I've always liked those. So if you imagine a choose your own adventure story told by Stephen King, I'll send you a copy. It's that set in a warped gallery, and it's written like, it's like you go in a gallery and a strange man comes up and he says, so welcome to the gallery, where would you like to explore, upstairs to the gallery or downstairs to the dungeons? And then depending on where you go, then that becomes the red cards and the black card. So it's the classic journey that you might go red or black, heart or diamond, thing or spades. And the story is that there was a rich old guy who owned casinos, and so he I need to go and reread it because it's been about 10 years since I read it, but it's basic premise that he had 52 portraits done inspired by a different card, and then you go and you see them and it's got a twisted ending. So it's a sort of book framing presentation for the ID methodology. So there was that, and that was, as you do.
You've just hit, before you move on to the next one, you've just hit on my bugbear, which is I hate it that magicians just take Invisible Deck and just do the same bloody thing over and over again. It's just like invisible. And I shared on this channel recently, you'll like this because you're into time travel. I shared my presentation for Invisible Deck, which is basically...
Oh, I saw that with the time hop thing. Was that with that one? Or
no, a different one. Basically, I put the deck down and I say, if I tell you I could turn a card over in the deck and it's the card you're thinking of, would you be impressed? And they say yes, and I say, well, I'm going to do it, but it's going to be because of time travel. You see, I can actually communicate with my future self, and my future self will tell me everything that I need to know. And as I'm saying this, my phone rings, and it's from future Craig.
Oh, nice.
I have a conversation with future Craig, and I go, you sure that's the card? Oh, great, brilliant. Okay, hang on. I then take the Invisible Deck and I turn the card over, and I go, name a card. It doesn't matter what card you name. My future self has told me. They name a card. I then spread through the deck and show it's the card. And then the kicker is I then pick up my phone, I call past Craig, and I give them the other half of the conversation.
Oh, that's a nice, complete the loop. Lovely.
And I've done that for years. I've shared it on the channel recently. And
you're too prolific. I've seen about 1 in 5 of your videos, and then I'm like,
but yeah, I mean, for me, I've done that presentation for years, and it's just an example of taking Invisible Deck. There's so much you can do with it. And so, yeah, I love the idea of that.
No, that's great. And I think it is that flip as well, where you go, and I've similar, it's funny. So I've got a trick in my other show, which happens to use Invisible Deck. And it's that funny thing. I think sometimes if you're not used to thinking in terms of plot, you just go, it's so easy to go, yeah, but it's just the Invisible Deck. And you're like, no, but to the audience, it is not. Like that is so incidental. We're so used to being like, method, everything else. But like, it's so incidental. I have a trick in I did a show about sort of magic and science and mixing the two. And in one of it, and it was about it was about how also it was about how some people have a heightened sense of smell, because it was also about different states of mind, because I did psychology at uni. I was interested in that. So I say in some people, when they're pregnant, they get a heightened sense of smell. So I've started taking pregnancy hormones. So the upside, I've got an amazing sense of smell. Downside, I've started to lactate. So anyway, so that's that. And then I sniff the audience, right? And this is, I guess, this is very pre-COVID, obviously. I have a little sachet of herbs, like they are literally just herbs, but they look like something else. Anyway, so a sachet of oregano, I give it to someone in the audience. I turn around, they hand it to anyone in the audience. And when they came in, they each put a like hospital wristband on, and each wristband, there's 52, each has a different playing card written on. So they hand it to someone in the audience while I'm looking away. I come out, I then come into the audience and I sniff the audience. I sniff through the audience, and then I go, and then I run on stage, and I make sure everyone's got their wristband up, and I sniff them all and go, and I go, okay, got it. And then I run back and I turn over one card, and I go, okay, for the first time, what's the, stand up, who's got the herbs, and then what was the thing in your wristband? There we go. And then, and then I reveal it's there. And it's the same thing, like it's just the invisible deck. But as a performance, what happened? Oh, we sniffed the audience and found some herbs. Like hopefully the card thing is almost even forgotten about, as opposed to, oh, it's just the invisible deck like any other deck. It's exactly, we've got the tools that they can go, we've got the amazement, we've got the finale. Anyway, we've got the, we've got the explosions at the end, we've got the fireworks, that we've got the finale. We can start it in so many places. It's, so much fun.
Absolutely. And the other book, the fourth book, you said there was a...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, remember, good. You see, this is why you did marketing, I did advertising, and I'm terrible. It's like the driving instructor who can't teach their family, like it's like, or whoever, or that kind of thing. I'm like that. What is it? The cobbler with the bumpy feet. So then the other one, like we were saying beforehand, is this one. So it's called Sell Your Show in Seconds. And there we go. Shazam! I should be doing that. I should do that. And this was called, so like we said before the call, so I for years, because I've juggled doing sort of advertising, creativity and magic. And then I was like, after the years, I was like, finally a minute, hang on, there's got to be a way that these kind of mesh together. So this is basically, because I worked out, it was something crazy, because I work out if you do 50 to 100 ads a week, and you do that over 15 years, it's like, I can't remember, it was like 36,000 ads or something I come up with. So like, it was everything I've learned from that, but then applied to how can you do better show posters. So it's like, but it's principles, as it was originally written for sort of fringe shows, but all the principles work for, online shows, 90% of them as well, because it's about, it's about simplicity. It's about how do you make it, personal? How do you make it tempting? How do you, find a good short quote? How do you, polish your blurbs? How do you overcome lack of time? There we go. That's written by a person who has kids. So I wrote that. That's more recent, and that's really fun. I did a brief talk at the Circle about it, but I think it was just really nice to share. So it's got examples from comedy as well, but it's just nice to share that process and being like, well, we can, because on a good day, magic should be so different. There's so many different people in magic, and yet we've all seen the same 10 posters that, cards in the distance, or the playing card tie, or black and gold, whatever it is. Like, there's so many things. And again, it's those questioning assumptions. Even if people just started on their posters and went, or their squares for, online shows, whatever, and just went, right, what's the assumptions? And you go, okay, loads of playing cards. It's black and gold. Okay, so, and then just question each one, and then just go, okay, no playing cards. Right. Okay, what if it's white? It's really light and airy. Okay. Like, and no quotes. That's the other thing. Like, quotes are good. Like, see any big show in the West End or wherever advertised, it's always like amazing, awesome, amazing, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's had them. So few people actually put them on their thing. And it's like, people like social proof. It should be, I hate the phrase no brainer, but like should be such a simple way. And just stick an adjective. You see a 10-word quote, it's like, pick out the adjective, amazing, there we go. You don't need this show was amazing, like just that's all you need. And then so that's that book. And then the other thing, and then the other reason why I haven't published in 10 years is time. So I did 5 Edinburgh shows. So that was,
and this is something I want to talk about, because but actually, before we talk about Edinburgh, very quickly, I want to put down at the bottom of the screen where people can buy these, because I'm telling anybody who watches this channel, that listens to my reviews and listens to what I say, if you have any inkling in wanting to become a better magician and more creative, and you want to actually be able to start thinking about taking your magic in totally different directions, you have to get every single book that you.
I will send you. So I will send you a link for that as well. That you can put up. Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, I do want to do that. That's brilliant. Thank you. I love to share it. Because like I say, love the creating, not great at self-promotion. So that is excellent.
I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you because you self-published the books, didn't you? You didn't.
I did, and that was really that was a really interesting experience. I think because, yeah, I think at first it was interesting. I thought about going with other people, but I because I'd been in advertising and the copy side of things, I was okay with writing, and also I knew a graphic designer, so I thought it'd be an interesting process to see how it would work, and it was good. Like I don't know if I'll self-publish everything, because obviously with, if you publish with other people, you can get nicer productions, or they maybe more help with promotion and getting out to a wider audience. So that's the trade-off. But for self-promotion, it's been good. And the real upside was because I published through a company called Lulu, which are a bit like Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP now. So it's print on demand. So it means I have zero stock, which is lovely, because unlike sometimes, like created a card trick and I have, still have a few boxes of those around because of minimum orders. So 0 minimum order is lovely. So yeah, so you can create, it sits there, and they've been out 10 years. So, but every now and then, I'll get some sales, and it's like they just pop up, and you haven't got boxes of stuff, you're not shipping it out, you literally, you upload, you're done. And you do get, you may get fewer sales, but you get a bigger cut of each sale. So it's a trade-off. They both got their upsides. But yeah, I enjoyed the process.
I spoke to Matt Baker recently, who I don't even know much about. Matt, he's in America. He's a college professor actually, but he's like the man when it comes to Memdeck magic, and he published a book called the Buena Vista Shuffle Club, which is you should read it actually. It's very, the way it's written in as if there's this fake group of people called the Buena Vista Shuffle Club, and Matt Baker has sent his creations to them, and they're performing it and then discussing it between themselves.
That's a cool concept.
And there's fictional characters. It's not even real characters, but they're improving Matt's tricks, which is so weird because he's written these characters and they're making improvements on tricks. But it's very cool, very cool. I think sometimes magic books can be quite dry, and that was, anyway, the point is, he said the same thing about self-publishing, where because he's got a full-time job, he's very busy, and for him having that sort of print-on-demand thing was brilliant.
Yeah, it's totally game changer for people who do, like, if you've got, if you've got an audience and a big email list, and you can, do a pre-order, and you've got bomb 300 books, then go for it. But if you haven't and you do want to self-publish, then yeah, go for it. But just the big caveat I say is that there is no gatekeeper, but at the same time, act as if there is. So you still want to produce quality, because you can still get other people to check it, because we've all got self-published stuff that's really good, and then we've all got some self-published stuff we've seen that's all, it's all just chucked together and it's all a bit rough around the edges and blah, blah, blah. So I think, yeah, it's make it as good as if it was being published by someone else. And imagine imagine you have a team of Edinburgh editors and graphic designers and all the rest of it, and don't feel you have to do everything yourself. With that, like with your magic and your, that comes from your soul, the inspiration from that, great. But in terms of self-publishing, find a graphic designer, just for the, what value. The older I get, the other thing I realize is, I know this is value your time. I think when I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna, and then I took a week, I've got dual nationality, for instance, and I took a week off to try and learn how the US tax system works, so I could do my US tax return as well as my UK. And I got to the end of the week and I was like, just get an accountant on first, just done. And it's the same with self-publishing. Yes, you can learn graphic design if you have, if fair enough, time and money. If you have the time and you're interested, then go for it. But yeah, but just for the sake of, whatever it'll cost, just get a graphic designer for that. Some things are worth outsourcing, as with business, and some things are worth doing yourself. So yeah, make sure if the product's good, then self-publishing is good, and just be aware that you need to promote it yourself. But if you're going to do that, then yeah, it's really nice. It does give you a nice feeling of ownership. As well as other ones, but as ever, I'm not very this my way or the highway. I think they both got upsides, but yeah, it was certainly good for those books.
Perfect. Now let's talk about the Edinburgh Fringe. Purely because there's a lot of magicians that have always thought about doing the Edinburgh Fringe. I've never done it. I did the Brighton Fringe a couple of times, never did the Edinburgh Fringe. But I know that just from my experience of doing Brighton, it made me such a better magician. And I think that it's something that a lot of people should consider. I've recently spoke to Tom Crosby. He massively advocated it. So what's advice do you have for me? Well, first of all, talk to us a bit about your experience with the Fringe, and then what advice you would give people in terms of putting their own Fringe show together.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Great question. So yeah, and Tom Crosby's the man. Like he's done it in a textbook of sort of how you do Edinburgh. So I would say watch him. Tom Crosby's great. He knows what he's doing. Certainly in terms of sort of making it Edinburgh and that side of things. Like in terms of like the path that you follow if you want to grow and become Fringe famous and stuff. Like he's got it nailed. So yeah, follow him. In terms of I suppose reasons to do it would be interesting, and I think what the good and bad I think would be interesting. So yeah, sorry. So it's sort of in a nutshell my experience. So I took sort of bits and bobs, and I think people's first show is often sort of, you know, bits and bobs that they've been working with, and they collate it into something like the first comedy show often. I took a show called Time Warper, which was about time travel. It was a time travel magic show. I love high concept shows, you know, like films. So and again, it's that leap far first. So that's just me. I like going, hey, this is magic plus whatever, time travel, because then it makes everything else easier to be different. But you don't have to do that. So I started with that. And then I did a show called Live Brain Surgery. Because, you know, you've got to give a title that intrigues people. So that was, all my shows combine magic with other things because that's what I enjoy. So that one was magic and neuropsychology. So basically extraordinary states of mind illustrated through magic. So like the hypersense of smell, and then you do a trick that illustrates that, or synesthesia, where people sort of smell colors and things like that, tricks about that. So then I did that. So those were both on the free Fringe. Then I hopped to, or the free festival, sorry, the Alex Petty one. It's good. Nice people. And then I hopped to the paid Fringe, and I went with Just the Tonic, who are also very nice. Daryl's a really good guy. And then I did a show called Magic and Science. When Magic and Science Collide. So that was Magic and Science in a more general sense. And then I did a sort of upgrade version of that, 2.0, I think the next year. And then I did two more shows. And then I've done two more shows. One that was a semi-improvised magic show called Meech's Improvised Magic Show. And then I did one show about magic and food. So that was mostly Magic and Food Collide. So those are my sort of 5 Edinburgh shows that I've taken there. In terms of advice for other people, I should say in terms of ups and downs, like Edinburgh is a roller coaster. So I suppose I'll do the downsides and then the upsides, and we finish on a positive. It's so I do love Edinburgh. I think it's definitely worth doing for the right reasons. So Edinburgh is a roller coaster, like both from year to year and also from day to day, because, you know, from year to year. So I've had like Magic and Food. I found really hard show because of all the other time commitments and whatever else. I should have done more previews, and that is definitely a tip. If you are doing it like you did the Brighton Fringe, it changes. It may have changed, but I did the Brighton Fringe. I did the Buxton Fringe, that's a good one as well. I did Leicester Comedy Festival, that's in February. So you can dot them through, and I would definitely do previews, because you want to, Edinburgh, you can get good, but it's, as other people have said, it's better to get there good and become better than get there wobbly and get good. So my shows that really worked, they were good, and then they got better. And then food, because of lack of time, whatever, I'd fixed it by a few shows in. I did some radical surgery and rejigging, fixed it. But like when they start bumpy, that is tough, because you're flyering and doing everything else. And yeah, so that would be do previews. Decide why you want to go, and that's why other people have said that. It's very good for, and if you want to go and polish your show and do that, then it can be good for that. It'd be great for that because you do it every single day and you do little spots in between. So then maybe do free Fringe, start with that. Don't invest your life savings in year one. Because if you do paid Fringe, it can go up and up and up. And if you haven't got the audience, you can, you know, not happily, but, you know, 10 grand, some people, you know, 15 grand, you can pour into it if you want to. But so, yeah, start free Fringe, I would say, unless you've got some other fame going for you. And then if you want to do the Fringe famous thing, you want to build a career that way, and you want to grow, then I would say do what Tom did, and again start free Fringe, but and then build up and go bigger venues, and do it multiple times. I know others have said that you can't. It's very hard to make it completely in 1 year. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. So I think first year you do a small venue, a few people get to see you, they get the word around, because people come year on year, which is surprising. I didn't know that. But so next year it's a bit bigger. Third year, maybe you jump to the paid fringe, you know, and then you can build up that way. So, and then depends what you want to get out of it as well. So it's interesting. So I think, and also don't feel you have to change your show every year. So I definitely felt like some comedians are definitely like, oh, it's got to be a new hour every year. That's it, you know, bomb, 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 bomb. And they do open mics like nobody's business in a way that, you know, magicians don't necessarily always have the opportunity to. And B, you don't have to, like Tom Crosby, you know, he has some bits the same and he adds new bits, and he's done that. And also you get known as a brand. Like, I hate that phrase, but you know what I mean? People know the kind of thing that they're getting from you. And I think one of the things that if I do Edinburgh again, I would focus on, or I'm trying to think of, is, I hate the phrase meta brand, but like, what is my overarching, because I get easily bored. Like, you know, I kind of go, hey, let's do something about magic and time travel. Let's do something about magic and food. And for me, it's all like, hey, this is creative magic stuff. But for someone coming, like I wear, and also with my outfit, because I wore a lab coat while I was doing the magic and science, because I'd done sort of 3 years of that kind of thing, people got to know that. And then when I did magic and food, they were like, oh, well, you're the lab coat. Oh, okay. Oh, no, you're the improv guy. Oh, now you're the food guy. So I think that's something to bear in mind. That's only in retrospect, you know.
That's something that Tom actually said. He said that he's got to a point now that when he does a fringe show, he can borrow a Rubik's Cube from the audience because they go, and he knows the type of people that he attracts. And if he borrows a cube, it's going to be a good one. And he can literally, there's the only place in the world that he can walk out on stage and go, who can lend me a Rubik's Cube?
Yeah, exactly, which is mad. Like when magicians, when they say, borrow a deck, and you go, where, you know, outside of a convention is that? So yeah, it's great. So I think go into it knowing, and it's striking a balance. And I think, and also think about your show title a lot. Think about your visual a lot. Like that is your best thing, because so many people will take a punt on a show, but all they've got to base it on, they've got whatever it is, 30 words, 30, 40 words in the blurb. They've got an image that works at that big. So don't think of lots of complexity, but that big. So my images definitely help, because I know people say they went to see it. So I had one that was I think some of them might be in my book. If not, I can show them. But yeah, there's one that's like my head in a jar, like green head is in a jar, we going like that. And then that got a lot. And then there was the improvised magic show, was my head but turned into a light bulb. So kind of, which I've plugged some blog posts on that. So I think, yeah, really spend time on that up front, because the more you can get people to buy, and some people buy really early, the more you can get people to buy tickets for your show. It's not the case if you're free fringe, but if you're ticketed, if you are paid, before you get to Edinburgh, the difference of getting to Edinburgh and realizing that you've got whatever, 10 seats sold every day, 20 seats, whatever, or more, between having none, like that just psychologically is great to know that you've got that. So yeah, I think that's good to do. Realize it'll be a lot of work, like, because you have to plug your own show and stuff. And yeah, and think of a title. And again, it's about being different and being different from other people. Because if you're doing a gig and you go, hey, here's a magic show, then they go, okay, great, I need a magic show for my wedding. Okay, can I have a magician? You go, yes, here is a magician for your wedding. And then you go and then you do magic, general magic, and then that's fine, because there's one of you, or if they've looked around online, you differentiate yourself in other ways. But if you flick through the Fringe guide, especially now, and it seems even more, like, 70 magic shows there. And then if you go, and this is why I say stick quotes in as well. Even if you've got like the Buxton Fringe or the Brighton Fringe, they're really good, because they're smaller, so you can often get your reviews before you get to Edinburgh. And that's really helpful as well, because then you get there, if you've got, just imagine there's you and 10 other, it's the game, you and 10 other magicians, and their title's called Amazing Magic, Incredible Magic, Time Travel Magic Show, then, or Performing Nerd, then you go, oh, okay, it just stands out. It's, it is simple, but it's so easy to forget in magic, because we can, for a lot of the time, do a magic show and it's fine. But when you're literally seeing the equivalent of a lineup of, here are your 16 different things, and you've got 4 seconds while someone's walking past or someone's scrolling past on their Facebook. It's the same principle, to go, why should I pick you? Or on Google, then you go, oh, well, because this is about this, this is performing nerd magic, or this is, I don't know, Nicola Arcane's really creative. Like she does, like amazing, wild creative magic, or, whoever it happens to be. Like, what's your one sentence version of your show? And then I think that will help. But just bear in mind, don't go so niche. It's finding that balance. Don't go so niche that you have to reinvent the wheel. And that's what I'm trying to work out. So whether I become the Magic Collider or Magic Mashups, or I'm trying to come up with a phrase that basically becomes, I am Magic plus this other thing, but I'm not having to reinvent the wheel every year. So they know they'll get, you know, Magic Explorer. I don't know what it is. I haven't come up with that perfect phrase. So if anyone watching comes up with one, let me know. But yeah, that's the only thing is if you just want to learn, go for it. It's brilliant. If you want to build, it will take a few years, but go for it. It's a roller coaster, but it's a fun roller coaster. And and maybe start with 2 weeks rather than the full month. That's the other thing I'd say, because 2 months, if it's going well, great. You can come back, do another whole month if you can get a slot. You know, a full month, if you have a great time, that's great. If you have if you're feeling mixed or you're feeling ill or whatever, like 3 weeks, like when you 12 shows on the trot, 1 day off, and then you've got another 12 to go, like, yeah, that way the other consider. Don't feel you have to do a full run your whole time. Like 2 weeks is just fine.
That's really good advice. That's really good advice. And obviously buy the book, because that was intended for promoting yourself at Fringes. There you go. I'll throw that one in there for you.
There you go.
So here's a question for you to before we round all this off. What next? This is a question I ask everybody that I interview, and I feel I can ask it because everyone I interview is amazing for various different reasons. And you know, you've literally, like I said to you before, you've literally written a book on creativity multiple times. You've done the Edinburgh Fringe. You've done an amazing job. You've smashed that. Where next? What do you have on your bucket list that you're wanting to achieve?
That is a good question. Hang on, let me just turn my laptop because I just realized it's not charging. There we go. There. So that is a good question. What next? I am torn. So I'm one of those people, I spent a lot of my life torn. I was considering calling my next Edinburgh show Torn and Restored Magician, because I spent so much of my life going, shall I do that? But shall I do that? Again, the flip side of creativity. I don't go, oh, I have nothing to do. I have, oh my God, I've got 15 ideas. Which one should I do? So that's the two. I think for me, I've really enjoyed sharing magic again. So I have a blog, which we can put up maybe or whatever, but it's wideopenmagic.com.
Some of your blog posts are amazing.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah. So I'd love more people come check them out. They're just like a whole bunch of different ideas, because I have a backlog, like you say, because of basically, and also starting a family, and doing the Edinburgh Fringe shows, which I haven't turned into a book yet, because I'm not sure how much I'm going to release them. But between the two of those, that's what the 10 years have been going. But in the background, the magic brain is always whirring. So I'd like to, I'm torn. I'd like to do another book, but it'll be early stages. I'm torn between doing little books that could come out versus doing a gajunk book. Part of me would quite like doing a book of, because I did after the second one say, keep an eye out for plot development, and then it's 10 years later. So I might do that. I quite like to do a book that's sort of a mix of, a bit like Tom Stone's books, but sort of a real mix of like nuggets of ideas and then fully fleshed out routines and how to create. So I'd like to do that at some point. I'd like to do more. I'm considering doing a bit more sort of teaching and that side of things. But it depends how much there's an appetite for that. I'm not sure. I know some people just like to have bits rather than sort of how to create themselves, but that is something else I'm considering. So if people are creatively stuck and would like some creative coaching, then drop me a line. I'm always happy to ponder that kind of thing. And then there might be another Edinburgh show when Edinburgh opens and all the rest of it. I feel like I have a few ideas for Edinburgh shows that are sort of bubbling away. And I really want to do I like sort of high concept sort of sitcoms, or that sort of, I like warm sitcoms that have interesting ideas, or like Rick and Morty, those sort of, there's something in the world of adventures and character-based stories and magic. I quite like to do something that's a bit more structured, as well as bitty modular stuff. I just quite like to do a show that's more structured and character-based, but that is a bit of an undertaking. So that's bubbling away in the background. But for now, the blog will keep going for a little bit. I want to think another plan. There will be more books coming out, but there is lots of stuff bubbling away. It's just a matter of time.
And would you ever, because you've never put out a DVD or anything like that, would you ever would you ever do anything like that? So, for example, a Penguin Live where I don't know if you'd
love to do a Penguin Live. Yes, I totally love to do a Penguin Live. Again, this is where loving the creativity rubbish itself for emotion. So yes, I would love to do a Penguin Live. I do need to drop them a line. Like when that opens up.
Like me to put you in touch with Sean Dunn.
That would be amazing. Yes, please. Because I love Penguin like I've seen, especially especially the sort of live show versions.
I love their version where you come out, you do a show, and then you sit down and you explain it, and there's somebody like Dan Harlan there who you can bounce off. And I personally think I see a lot of magic. I think Penguin are hitting it out of the park at the moment. I really do.
Oh, they really are. Yeah. And I think also just showing, I think it's great as well because same with the reason I Morgan and West parlor tricks, read that recently, and that's great, big fans of theirs. But like, because I think just because you get the tricks, but you also get the personality, and also, you know, you get someone's personality a lot more in a show, and you really see hopefully people don't just duplicate it as is, but you get that whole sense of how it fits together. And, you know, I think you get that in a sense that you don't always with individual tricks, because, you know, products, they're designed to be performed by anyone and everyone. So there isn't always a really hardcore personality on there, you know, because they're inherently supposed to be slightly flexible and doable by anyone. So I think, yeah, something like that where you've got a proper show and that you can show how it all fits together and do some bigger stuff. And also because there's so many of them, like get some real breadth. And I'm really excited by that in magic. So also the other thing I want to do is connect to other magicians more, because I know a lot of magicians, but there's so many more out there, and especially, you know, a wider range as well. I know you mentioned like it's great, you know, getting to know Nicola Arcane a bit online, and, you know, it's great to see more women coming into magic. I really want to and people from different backgrounds. It's really good. I'm all for that. I'm all for more of that. So yeah, please do, exactly. If anyone's on here, drop me a line. I'm on Facebook, or I'm wideopenmagic@gmail.com, or just, you know, you can find me online. And yeah, I love connecting to people and bouncing ideas around and that kind of thing. So yeah,
you are one of the friendliest, most approachable people that I know, which is just wonderful. It's really
and
wonderful.
Also, just because if you see me at a convention back when they open, hopefully all that, yeah, do come say hi, because I'm very friendly in person, but I'm also very shy. Like I'm like most magicians, I'm a bit socially awkward. So like, yeah, so like if you see me, I'm always up. I'm always generally up for a chat, and yeah, do come say hi, even if I'm feeling shy. I don't actively come over. So yeah, absolutely.
It is a very overwhelming thing going, especially somewhere like Blackpool. Where there's literally, if you've never been to Blackpool before and you go there for the first time and you walk in, you can get serious imposter syndrome. It's like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to do anything. I'm going to mind my own business and hope that people don't say anything to me. It's, and I know Russ, because I did an interview with Russ recently, and he's working very hard since taking over the convention on having it so that it is so friendly and open, and but just the overwhelmingness of it is just really.
And I think having that, like I know Megan Knowles-Bacon from Magic Circle, I know she mentioned, I think in the past, that she used to do a kind of buddy system with other female magicians. I think it's really, like, I still remember, on the Magic Circle, when you go into the club room, there's these pockets of people, like at Blackpool, there's all these people, and you're like, whoa. And if you know someone, you're like, oh, okay, that's your in, and you can kind of go, but if people are also because everyone obviously is also a bit shy, they stay more in their circles because they're a bit shy, I think. And then once you get past that and you go, oh, what are you working on or whatever, like we all share the same passion, speak the same languages, getting over that initial. So that's great to hear that Russ is doing that, because I think it's really good, because I think the more, like anything, the more diversity of people we get, the more diversity of thought we get, is going to make it better for magic. And I think already, it's so good, it's so nice recently, there's so much more varied magic I feel like there is going on at the moment, and different approaches and styles and different kinds of people, and not just the same minor variations. So I think more of that is got to be a good thing for magic. I'm looking forward to it, definitely.
Absolutely. You know what?
Thank you for interviewing me. It's been a pleasure to have a good.
I've been wanting to interview you for a long time, and thank you for finding the time. I know you're such a busy guy. Like I say, family, advertising, magic, juggling. I can relate to all of that. It's very time.
Yes.
So thank you so much for finding the time. And one more time, because I know he's not going to say it himself, really go and buy his books, because they meant they were such a big influence on me when I first read them, and it really helped me from a creativity point of view, and I think it will for anybody else that reads them as well. So
that's lovely to hear. Yeah, I hope so too.
It is true. So Oliver, one more time, thank you very much for coming on the program. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in again. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock with my little buddy Ryland. We'll be doing a review show, so make sure you check that out. 14 videos every single week. So subscribe to the channel. I know, I don't know how I find the time, but I do. So there you go. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment for Oliver down below, because I'm sure he'll be reading all of them. And thanks very much for watching. Oliver, thanks again.
Cheers.